This is Sports Talk, home to great debates and the hottest sports topics. Now, here are your hosts, Jeremy Farina, Justin Paolillo, and Holden Borelli.
Hello, North Haven. My name is Justin Paolillo, and I'm here with Holden Borelli. This week we are down Jeremy Farina. He is not in studio tonight, but I'm sure he's watching, and he'll be back next week, ready to talk sports here. But Holden, I'm gonna start off with the NBA here. Obviously, we're past the midpoint season. The All-Star break's coming up soon. Who do you think thus far in the season will win the East? Who do you think will win the West? And who do you think out of those two teams will win the NBA title?
Well, I think you can definitely make a strong argument for the Atlanta Hawks, considering how strong they've looked in the first half of the season, going on that 19-game winning streak. But the way the Cleveland Cavaliers have played so far, they're 9-1 in their last 10 games. They're starting to look better on offense, especially the play of Kevin Love. The trade for J.R. Smith and Iman Shumpert really strengthened the Cleveland Cavaliers on both ends of the floor. They're looking like a legitimate threat in the Eastern Conference because they're coming together as a team. I definitely think they're the only team with enough playoff experience, a la LeBron James, to make noise in the Eastern Conference come playoff time. I don't think Atlanta has a guy on their team that when it comes to postseason time, you can rely on him to close the game and win the game for you, to give him the ball and say, take me there. I don't think they have that guy. And for the West, it's going to be a dogfight. I mean, there's 4 or 5 legitimate teams that could win the Western Conference. I don't think anyone wants to play Oklahoma City as an 8th seed, but if you had to ask me where I put my money, it's definitely the Golden State Warriors. They've had experience the past 2 seasons in the playoffs. Steph Curry is a veteran in this league. Even though he's pretty young, he's had a lot of experience playing professional basketball. He's an MVP candidate. Klay Thompson is a stud all-star, great secondary scorer to Steph Curry. They have a deep bench. When David Lee's coming off your bench, you know you have a great team. And I think Steve Kerr has done a wonderful job putting this team together. And I think they play great defense. They can obviously score. I think those 2 teams are going to meet in the finals, the Warriors and the Cavs. And I have to go with the Warriors because they've been together longer. They have more synergy. And I think LeBron James, being the only guy on the Cleveland Cavaliers roster, except for Mike Miller with postseason experience, is really going to hurt the Cavaliers in a situation like the finals.
Well, for this topic, I wish I could pick my Milwaukee Bucks to come out of the East, but I think they're a couple years away at this point, especially with the Jabari Parker injury. But in the East, I mean, you mentioned the Hawks and the Cavs obviously playing great thus far, but another team you can't really count out here is the Washington Wizards. I mean, right now they got Beal battling a toe/lower leg injury at this point, but I think if he comes back healthy, I mean, you bring in Paul Pierce to be that guy who's been in the championship before, been in the playoffs many times, and he knows what he's doing there. And then you look at a guy like John Wall, who's the league leader in assists this year, the starting point guard on the All-Star team, and he's just the leader on this team. I mean, Gortat's putting up great, solid numbers, and if Nene stays healthy, he's a great defender. So I'm going to pick the Wizards to come out of the East. And in the West, I mean, I've been saying this all year. I think the Grizzlies, they've been my NBA championship pick since day one, so I'm going to go with them coming out of the West. And I just answered my own question there. I think they're going to win the NBA title this year. I just think they have so much depth. Adding Jeff Green, that bench is very good. I mean, anytime you could almost shut down, they have 5 guys in their starting lineup who could potentially shut down all 5 of the other guys' players. I mean, you got Gasol guard the center, Randolph, who I would say is their worst defender on the team right now, and he's a pretty good defender. And then you got Tony Allen, who can guard pretty much anybody on the court, and Jeff Green's a good defender. Mike Conley is one of the best defending point guards in the league, so I think defense is going to win this championship. And
I love Memphis. I love their player roster. I think, for me, though, when it comes to postseason time, yes, it's a players' league, but specifically in the postseason, what it comes down to is coaching. Which team has the better coach, the coach that knows when to sub certain players out or in, make certain adjustments at halftime or during the game. And I think that's why we've seen teams like the Heat and the Spurs with experienced coaches win championships, because they've made those adjustments to win games. And when I look at Memphis' coach, I think Memphis has done a great job because they have a lot of veterans and they know what they're doing out there. But this coach is only his second year as a head coach. I haven't really seen him work in the playoffs and what he's done, so I think it's really going to come down to coaching for their head coach and what he does in the playoffs if they're going to get over the top.
You know, I mean, speaking of good coaches, I mean, we didn't even mention the Spurs. I mean, you just did a little bit there, but this team is always a legitimate threat. If they're healthy, they got all their guys out there, and they got momentum going into the playoffs. I don't think you can cut this team out at any stage of the playoffs. So, like you said, you don't want to be playing the Thunder in a 1-8 matchup. I don't think you want to be playing the Spurs in a possible 2-7, maybe a 3-6, because that's what's going to be great about the West this year. I mean, most of the time the first round is, okay, it's still the playoffs, but you know this team's automatically winning, this team is. But I think this year, potentially all 8 teams have a shot of going far, and the first rounds of these playoffs could be equivalent to conference finals of past years. So this is definitely going to be a fun playoff coming up. And so just to summarize what we have mentioned here, I picked the Grizzlies to win the whole thing, and Holden here picked the Warriors.
Yep.
I think we could agree that the West is the better conference this year.
Absolutely.
But we're going to stay out West. Blake Griffin going down with the staph injury on his elbow. I mean, the staph infection on his elbow. Do you think if Blake Griffin stays out for a long period of time here, do you think the Clippers could possibly fall out of the playoffs? I mean, even if they don't fall out, I think getting a 7 or 8 seed is going to be tough.
Because a staph infection could be potentially a fatal, a fatal illness to contract if not treated. Obviously, he's getting treated. He'll be fine. He'll get better, but it's going to take time. Doc Rivers optimistically said we'll have him back in 10 days. Then he went back on that statement and said 4 to 6 weeks. 4 to 6 weeks. I mean, we're talking a month to a month and a half. And when you're playing in the Western Conference, that's going to be a dogfight getting through that stretch without Blake Griffin, who's, frankly, when Chris Paul was injured last year, the Clippers were, I think, 3-3 or 4-4 without Chris Paul. I think potentially without Blake Griffin, this team could be below 500 by the time he gets back, because Chris Paul, they're only a 6 seed right now in the Western Conference. Blake Griffin is their primary scoring threat because Chris Paul is the point guard. He runs the show. He can get his points, but primarily he's looking to get Blake his open shots and get him in his groove. And now he's not going to be there. You're going to lose a presence on the board, on defense. You're losing one of your big men. They're going to throw Spencer Hawes in, but he's more of a jump shooter. He likes to, step back behind the three-point line. He rebounds, but not to the level that Blake Griffin does. Blake Griffin's more of a paint player. Now they're going to have to rely on DeAndre Jordan, who really doesn't have any kind of game offensively. He's a great defensive player. And what's interesting to me is the Clippers, the next 20 opponents, 15 of them have a record above 500. So that's going to be a difficult stretch for the Clippers to endure. I think they can get through it because they do have a lot of star power, but playing in the Western Conference, there's a lot of star power to go around, so I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely going to be tough. I mean, the other thing, when you lose a guy like Blake Griffin, you not only lose his 20-plus points a game, but this guy's giving you 4 or 5 assists as well. I mean, you got a guy like Chris Paul on your team who's one of the best passers in the game, and you're still averaging almost 4 or 5 assists a game. His rebounding's great there, and his defense has been improving, so he's definitely a big loss. I think he's overall their best player this year. So I think this team, they're going to be at risk of falling out of the playoffs here. I mean, they're only a 6 seed, and as you mentioned, there's 4 or 5 teams right now between the 7-8 spot and then the 2 or 3 teams that are out right now who would love to get that 6th spot right now. And it's that, like you said, like you always say, Holden, it's going to be a dogfight in that West there. And I think if you lose your best player on any team, but specifically the Clippers, who really don't have much offensive power outside of Griffin. I mean, Paul can, give you 25 a night. I'm sure he'll average about 25-30 a game now that Griffin's out, but is that going to be enough? Because only 30 points, the team's still got to come up.
I think he can average 25 a night, but can he average it for 20 games? I think he'll give it to you for 10, but can he manage it for that long stretch of time? And look, they're saying 4 to 6 weeks. If it's 6 weeks at the max, they could potentially be in the 8th seed or below because they're losing Blake Griffin. they don't have a paint presence. They don't have a guy they can throw it down to in the post. You know, they have Jamal Crawford. He's a shooting guard.
Jamal's going to have to play big off the bench.
Chris Paul, I mean, DeAndre Jordan's not a post player. And when you're playing in the division that they're playing with the Golden State Warriors, you're going to get into some games where it's not going to be about defense. It's going to be about outscoring the other team, and can they do that without Blake Griffin?
It is definitely going to be tough. I mean, I think you definitely have to look at a guy like DeAndre Jordan. Maybe this could be his moment to, you know, pick up his offensive game. I mean, you see it in other players where maybe the star goes down, and then this guy says, you know, I got to pick up the slacker here a little bit. You saw it with Jimmy Butler last year, who was averaging like 6-7 points a game. Derrick Rose goes down and he gets a bigger role.
And they're already weak in some other areas. Austin Rivers hasn't really played up to his billing, being the number 10 overall draft pick. Now he's playing for his dad. Hasn't shown me anything. Jamal Crawford's aging. J.J. Redick has the back injury. Matt Barnes is shaky at the small forward position. Spencer Hall is coming in as a free agent, hasn't really gotten the minutes or the touches.
He's just more of a rebounder.
Glenn Davis is out too with an injury. This team already suffered enough blows, and they haven't gotten production from guys that were supposed to be producing. Now you lose a guy who is a producer. You're putting all the onus on Chris Paul, and I just don't know if he can manage that workload.
Yeah, this is going to be tough. I mean, the Clippers were struggling before Blake Griffin went down. I mean, they were losing to teams that they should be beating, and then you lose Griffin, so it's going to be rough.
Blowing out to OKC, who's in that 8th position.
Yes, definitely.
Chris Paul hits the crossback jumper we were talking about the other day, and Kevin Durant goes, "You're down 20, dude.
Yeah.
Like, why are you celebrating?"
So, I mean, maybe you'll have to celebrate those because they might be down 20 a lot. But it's going to. I think it's, to end this really, really quickly here, it's going to come down to the play of Chris Paul and DeAndre Jordan. I think if they can both, you know, drop 20-plus and keep doing what they're doing on the glass and the assists, I think this team has a shot to stay in the playoffs. But I think if their numbers stay as they do or even drop, I think the Clippers are done this year. But I'll keep it in the NBA. You mentioned the Cavs as being one of your, making it to the Eastern Conference. I mean, make it to the finals, in your opinion. But what do you think they have to do to take it to the next level and win that championship? What do you think they have to do?
I definitely think at this point, I mean, they have a pretty complete roster. Yes, Anderson Varejão's out. That would be my one more wish list kind of request for the Cavs. Get another big man presence on that team, some depth at the center position or power forward spot. Otherwise, this team's pretty much legitimate at all 5 positions in terms of depth. I think it really comes down to coaching and how the new coach, David Blatt, you know, really kind of steps up to the plate here and shows to people why, you know, he's the coach of the Cleveland Cavaliers and why he deserves to be an NBA coach. If he came over from Europe, his reputation was a brilliant offensive mind. We haven't really seen that from the Cavs. It's been pretty disorganized if you look at it in terms of offense. I mean, they're pretty much playing isolation sets where they're taking turns between Kyrie, JR, LeBron, and Kevin Love of who's going to be the primary scorer. David Blatt's going to have to do a better job of organizing some plays for more team-oriented basketball for the Cleveland Cavaliers. I think that definitely this team needs to have more time to gel together as a unit, and that's really all they need because come playoff time, this team should be ready to go from a chemistry standpoint to perform in the playoffs. They just need time.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you there. I think the team is set. But if I had to pick one thing as far as an improvement goes, I think you need to bring Kevin Love down to the post because last year he was down in the post. Sure, he hit his fair share of threes because he can, but he was down in the post a lot for the Timberwolves last year. And look what he did. I mean, if you look at the Cavs this year, they don't have a dominant post scorer. I'd understand if they had a, an Andrew Bynum when he was healthy, a guy who wants the ball in the post, and that's really all he does. They don't have anybody even close to that. Timothy Mozgov is there for rebounding and defense. So why not send Kevin Love down there and get some post-ups?
Well, I think the thing that you need to basically the reason why he's not playing in the post is because it's the Chris Bosh role. We're going to take you out of the post, your natural habitat. We're going to pull you away. We're going to put you away from the basket behind the three-point line so we can pull the other team's big men away from the basket, stretch the floor so LeBron James and Kyrie Irving can do what they do best, slash and score and lay it up against the rim. And that's what LeBron James does best. What he loves to do is drive to the rim and either do two things, finish or kick it out to Mike Miller, Kyrie Irving, Kevin Love, any three-point shooter on the floor. Ray Allen could potentially be on this team. That would be another floor spacing option for this team. But that's what Kevin Love's role is, a floor spacer. They put him away from the basket, behind the three-point line. They stretch the floor, pull your big man away, so Kyrie Irving can dribble drive or LeBron can dribble drive, and that's been the role of this team so far. And J.R. Smith's the same guy. He loves to drive to the rim or just throw it up. It's going up. He has no conscience, really, and that's why he left the New York Knicks. They had to get rid of him because he was just jacking up too many shots. But in Cleveland, on a team that loves to share the ball, especially with a superstar like LeBron James, J.R. Smith has a great role for this team. And Kevin Love, his role is a floor spacer.
Yeah, I just think, especially if this team plays small, because you could potentially have a lineup out there with Kyrie at the 1, and then you got the 2, 3, and 4 of Mike Miller, J.R. Smith, and Iman Shumpert, and then you put Love at the 5. There's no reason why Love shouldn't be down there. I just think he needs to get more touches down low where he feasted last year. I understand definitely what you're saying with if LeBron's on the floor, you have to spread the floor because he could score at the post. You don't
or
need
even
to
Kyrie, because Kyrie loves to dribble.
He can attack,
his handle is the best part of his game.
But I just think you have to give him a few more looks. Obviously, don't change your whole game plan and give Love the ball 9 out of 10 times. Maybe give it to him a couple times here and there because he could definitely do it. I just think he's hurting his career is maybe taking all these threes. So maybe if he goes to the Lakers next year, is he going to just want to take threes? Is he going to just magically go right back into a post player?
That's true. I mean, I understand what you're saying from a confidence standpoint. How can you take away touches?
Because look what happened to Bosh.
Right, look what happened to Bosh, and now he's now averaging 20 points a game. So not what he was averaging in Toronto, but he's been the primary option.
He's taking a lot of outside shooters.
Right,
jumpers, yeah.
Right. It's that mentality change, and I think that's what we're seeing happen in Kevin Love. I think what the issue with Kevin Love is he just hasn't gotten touches. And you can't blame the coach for not giving him his touches when you're on the same court as LeBron James and Kyrie Irving.
Who both need their shots.
And J.R. Smith. You could potentially say Kevin Love is a fourth option on this team. I think the perfect starting 5 would be obviously LeBron at the 3, Kyrie at the 1, Iman at the 2.
Just because you don't need more scoring.
Right. You bring J.R. off your bench, Kevin Love at the 4, and Tristan Thompson at the 5, vice versa. Kevin Love, this is a guy who's averaged 10 rebounds for his career. I think his role needs to really kind of simmer down to rebound, floor spacing. We'll get you your touches in the post, but you need to know that when we pull you away from the basket, it opens up things for everyone else. And he needs to get into that team mentality if they're going to win the postseason.
Yeah, Kevin Love will definitely be will definitely play a big role in the outcome of the Cavs season this year. But we're going to keep it in the NBA. Obviously, the All-Star weekend is coming up this weekend. It's great we don't have school next Monday, so we could stay up and watch it. It's going to start off with the celebrity game, which is tomorrow night. And Holden, I just wanted to ask you, maybe watching it in the past or maybe what you're looking forward to this year, what's your favorite event in the All-Star game? All-Star weekend.
It's not the celebrity game because I don't consider it a celebrity game because I never know who's in it. The last 2 times it's been Kevin Hart. He's like the only guy I know out there on the court.
He scored 4 points and won MVP.
And he wins MVP because that's like the guy people know, so they vote for him. Otherwise, it's pretty much like washed-up celebrities that you don't know. The secretary of like Homeland Security or Education.
There's like a
or something.
CEO of like Microsoft.
It's like what's going on? They're not even celebrities. Otherwise, I don't like the Rising Stars Challenge because I think it's just a bunch of young players. They don't really go very hard. Kenneth Faried last year had like over 20 rebounds or 30 rebounds. It was ridiculous, and that's just effort. So, no one else is giving the effort out on the court. It's always a high-scoring game. Frankly, I don't like the All-Star game either because until the fourth quarter, it's pretty much all the players are in cruise control, and they're not really trying that hard, which is understandable. My favorite events are the challenge where they usually have like a retired player, a WNBA player,
the skills challenge,
and then NBA player, and they do like the half court shots and stuff like that. I think that's pretty fun to watch. I like the 3-point contest, especially this year. Kyle Korver, Steph Curry, and Klay Thompson. Talk about a lineup. In addition to the other people participating, I mean, all you need is Ray Allen. That'd be a great contest. And the dunk contest this year is pretty good too. There's some notable names on that list. So I think for me, All-Star Saturday night is going to be the best part of the All-Star weekend.
I know what you mean, Holden. I think the 3-point contest is probably my second favorite at this point. I used to like the dunk contest until what I saw last year with that John Wall pulling off one dunk and like the East wins and then he wins. I did not like that format at all.
Yeah, I didn't like it last year.
Before when
Dwight Howard was
Dwight
out there.
Howard pulling off the Superman cape.
Right.
Nate Robinson. Everybody gets their fair share of dunks. You see more than just. Because what if a guy wasn't his greatest dunk? If you do this I'll call it nonsense because I don't like it. If you do this nonsense where it's everybody gets one dunk and then maybe your conference wins, I just don't think that's as competitive as previous years, and I just don't think the fans are as involved as previous years. My favorite part of it is definitely the All-Star game itself. I know what you mean with the three quarters as being somewhat of a joke, but I mean, you can compare this to the Olympics. Oh, because the Olympics has probably 12 of the best players in the world on one team. But you look at this, you have 20 of the best players in the whole world on the same court in one game. I understand the third quarter's a joke, but you get to see crazy jump shots, back and forth between two players, maybe a nice lob, a great dunk, ankle breakers. And then the fourth quarter is 10 of the best players in the world going 5-on-5 hard trying to win it for their conference. So I just personally like watching that game. But I do agree with you, Holden. The three-point shooting contest is great, especially this year. But really quickly, who do you think is going to win the three-point shooting contest?
That's a tough one. You could potentially say Kyle Korver, but because this guy's been shooting from behind the arc, 51% or something like that?
Yeah.
It's some ridiculous percentage, one of two. But I think it's going to be Steph Curry. Steph Curry can pretty much put the ball in the basket from anywhere on the floor.
And he's definitely known for his threes.
He's got a quick release, which is what you need in the three-point contest because you need to get up as many shots as you can before the time expires. So I'll have to go with Steph Curry.
Yeah, I think it's Curry, but I think a guy who could potentially win this would be Damian Lillard. I mean, he did obviously make the All-Star game because of the injured
Is he in the three-point contest?
I think he was.
I thought he wasn't participating in All-Star Weekend because
that must have been. Who was it? There was some point guard from the West who. Let's see, it was what? Curry, Thompson,
Korver. Is it Westbrook or?
I don't know. Was Lillard in it? I'm not sure. But,
I don't think Lillard, because Lillard complained that because he wasn't in the All-Star,
he's not doing anything.
He's not going to do anything.
But I was going to say, if Lillard was in it, I wouldn't be surprised if he wins as a more of a
yeah.
NBA.
I mean, the ideal lineup would be those three guys we mentioned: Korver, Thompson, Curry, Ray Allen, Durant.
I would like to see Durant.
Carmelo. That'd be great.
True. I mean, even Kevin Love, because he can shoot the three, definitely.
He can shoot the three.
Especially what we've seen this year.
He did it last year, I think, or 2 years ago.
See, maybe Serge Ibaka, who's starting to take a lot of threes. Maybe he can jump in.
Anthony Davis.
Anthony Davis. He'll be shooting threes by the end of his career, don't you worry. But let's move on to the NFL. Obviously, the Super Bowl's over, so there's not going to be that much to talk about. But we'll talk a little bit about for next season. Obviously, RG3. Another rough year this year with injuries, but do you think his career's done? Do you think he'll jump back this year?
Well,
what do you think?
I really wanted to talk about this tonight because in the news recently, the Washington Redskins sent out their annual newsletter to season ticket holders saying thank you for purchasing tickets again. We're looking forward to the season, and on it they said we're embracing our core nucleus of players of Ryan Kerrigan, Pro Bowlers, Deshaun Jackson, and Alfred Morris. RG3 was left off that list. So I don't know.
With him?
I don't know if that's supposed to be. Obviously, the media was going to talk about this. So did Jay Gruden, the coach, sort of plan this? Did Dan Snyder plan this to sort of motivate RG3 to kind of not focus on himself, brand RG3, not get in the attention of the media, stay away from Facebook, social media, just turn it off and stay off the grid and just kind of grind and focus on becoming a better quarterback and healthier? I don't know. I don't know if that was motivation. But I definitely think if you look at his past 3 years, his first year in the league, he was Offensive Rookie of the Year. 20 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. He rushed for about 8 more touchdowns. Great rookie year. Up 14-0 on the Seahawks in the wild card round of the playoffs. Then his following year, obviously, tore his ACL. Second year was rough because I think he came back too soon, kind of shattered his confidence because he wasn't playing well. And this year, he was playing pretty well. He was adjusting to this pro-style offense of Jay Gruden's. He got hurt, dislocated his ankle. He was out for 5 weeks. And I think he came back too soon. He wasn't healthy. And he wasn't completely comfortable because he didn't get enough reps in that style of offense because he was hurt. And he was gelling with Deshaun Jackson, a new receiver. They like to get him the ball a lot because he loves to get his touches. And frankly, if you look at that, 3 seasons were only 1 season of legitimate Pro Bowl caliber work. He was a first-round pick. The Redskins have the choice to exercise a 5th-year option on his contract, but he's a quarterback, so it's going to be for $18 million. I don't think he's worth $18 million. So for that reason, I don't think he's out, but this coming season, it's put up or shut up for RG3.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you there, Holden. I think this season is going to pretty much define RG3's career. I think if he can come back healthy and play to the full potential that we know he can play, and especially when they won their division, what was that, 2 years ago?
Yeah.
So I think if he can go back to that form, I think he has a bright future ahead of him. But if he has, maybe he starts off 1-2, great, pretty good. Week 3 has a great game. Week 4, he's going for a run. Somebody tackles him and he falls on his knee or elbow or something and gets hurt for the year. I just think that'll kill his confidence. Maybe another team will want to give him a chance, but I think that would just be the kind of if you want to say period of his career, that would just be it. But I just feel you got to feel bad for the guy. I mean, look at all the expectations he had. I mean, the Redskins trade all these draft picks to the Rams to get the pick. So I mean,
yeah, right. 3 first-rounders just for him at number 2. That was a costly price. I think RG3 though put this kind of onus on himself though, because when he got hurt from the ACL, people were still praising him and lauding him because he won the division and he was making a lot of his brand. He came up with that new logo. He was doing these commercials with Adidas, Subway. I mean, he was everywhere. He was all over my television. I couldn't go around with seeing something RG3 related. Then he did that whole documentary on ESPN about his rehab from ACL surgery. He did that commercial with Adidas all in for week 1. So he kind of drew all this attention for himself, and when he finally got on the field, he crumbled. And I think that's RG3 needs to go back to what he did before his rookie campaign. You didn't really hear about him at all, and then he came out and he balled, and that's what he needs to do again.
Yeah, I like I said, I think this is going to be a turning point in his career this year. But we'll move on to the MLB, get a quick topic in there. Spring training, I believe, starts in a couple weeks now. So we're still a while away from some meaningful games, But Padres making some great moves. I mean, Matt Kemp comes to mind specifically. But are they legit this year?
Well,
they struggled last year.
I'll let you answer first, Justin. But I want to bring this up because they made the move for Matt Kemp. They just recently signed James Shield, a free agent pitcher out of Kansas City for 4 years, $75 million. So they have an ace pitcher. They have a bat. And they put together some other nice pieces.
They got the catcher from the A's, right?
Right. They got the catcher from the A's, Upton, I believe. I mean, or I forget his name, but he's a stud player. It's Upton or Haywood. It's one of those guys. Haywood. Do you think they're going to make some noise?
I think they can. I mean, so let's look at their division, right? They're in the NL West.
Right.
So you got the Giants.
The Dodgers. Yeah, the Giants and the Dodgers.
Giants, Dodgers, Diamondbacks.
Yeah. Giants, Dodgers. Yeah.
So it's going to be tough. I mean, it's going to be, obviously you have to win in the regular season if you're going to go anywhere. So, and they're definitely going to be an improvement from last year.
Right.
But I mean, you got Paul Goldschmidt coming back for the Diamondbacks, who one of the best fantasy players in baseball, and one of the best players, obviously, one of the best first basemen in the game. So I think the Diamondbacks are going to be definitely legitimate this year, and obviously the Giants. Losing Jake Peavy's tough. But
we know what kind of loss that is. No, they re-signed him. They didn't lose him.
Oh.
2 years, $24 million. I was
So
complaining
they have
about
Jake
the other
Peavy,
night.
but some of the teams are going to be good.
Completely overrated. Jeremy, if you're watching right now, you better call in right now and pitch in on this topic right here, because Jake Peavy is overrated.
He's back and ready to go. And then the Dodgers, who most people think could make a World Series run this year. I almost said Super Bowl in the spirit there.
They've spent all the money on their roster.
They have to win this year. So that is definitely a tough division. I would say one of the best in baseball. So it's going to be tough, but obviously signing James Shields and Matt Kemp and getting a solid catcher behind your plate can't hurt. So I just think this team's moving in the right direction. I don't think they're World Series contenders this year per se, but maybe down the road chemistry blends in. Maybe you get a few more pieces. a couple more bats in the lineup, maybe another guy to help out James Shields in the rotation, I think this team they're definitely moving in the right direction. But as far as this year being legit for a title, I don't think so.
Yeah, they definitely did a great job of getting players who will be motivated for this upcoming season. When you think about Matt Kemp, he was kind of pushed out the back door in Los Angeles because he does have that hefty contract, but at the same time, he was a member of a crowded outfield. He wasn't getting playing time, and the Dodgers deemed him expendable. So I think Matt Kemp has a chip on his shoulder. He's going to go out this season with something to prove. And then they got James Shields for pitching, who sat on the free agent market for the longest time. He's 33 years old, but this guy has one of the most durable arms I've ever seen. I think he's pitched over 200 innings each of the last 8 seasons or something. I mean,
he did last year
he
with
is a
the Royals.
workhorse, and he sat on that free agency market for the longest time. I think he's going to have something to prove. And putting those two guys together, they get some more pieces, like you said. They can make some noise. They can take away some games from those guys
Maybe
in the
a wild card
Diamondbacks,
spot.
the Giants, and the Dodgers. They can be a threat.
And you see what happens when you get a wild card spot. I mean, look at last year's playoffs. The 2 wild card teams make the World Series.
Exactly.
So that's all you really have to do, because once you get in those playoffs, anything can happen. Maybe some guy catches fire with his bat,
I
smacks
honestly
in
think
10 homers in
they
the
can make some
playoffs.
noise in that division, because you look at Arizona, the only piece they have is really Goldschmidt. They got some other guys there, but really Goldschmidt's the only guy you know.
And if he goes down with an injury,
The
he's
Dodgers, I think, are first place in that division because they're just loaded at every position.
So
They
you would
have
say it would
pitching.
come down between the Giants and the Padres.
Yeah, and when I look at the Giants, you look at them, their pitching staff is falling apart with the exception of Madison Bumgarner. Jake Peavy choked in the postseason, but they re-signed him. Tim Lincecum has not looked like the Cy Young winner of old. Matt Cain was out for the majority of last season with a back injury.
We'll see what he does.
He's coming back from injury. We'll see what he does. This pitching staff is slowly falling apart, and when you're playing in a tough division like the NL West, it comes down to pitching. And I think it's going to be between the Padres and Giants. The Dodgers, I think, are a cinch. But it's going to come down to those 3 other teams.
And they're competing with other teams in the NL as well, because it's not like the second place team automatically gets in. You have to compete with those other second place teams who are just as good, if not better, than your team. So it's definitely going to be a tough race. That's why I don't think this year they're legit. But they're in the next coming years, I wouldn't be surprised if they make a lot of noise in their division out west. But we're going to head back to the NBA. Obviously, it's the time of year where the NFL is winding down. It's not yet the MLB, so
This is
it's
Justin's favorite time
my favorite
of the
time of year. Well, my favorite time of year.
The NFL's done.
My favorite time of year is in April when the playoffs start.
That's a month before the draft.
No, because then we had to talk about the draft. No, we're talking
Yeah.
about straight up NBA playoffs
All right.
that time of year. But we have another one of those player comparisons. Actually, we have 2 of them. Hold on, I'm going to ask you, who would you rather start your franchise with, DeMarcus Boogie Cousins or Dwight Howard?
To be honest with you, I'd rather start my franchise off with Dwight Howard. For this reason, Dwight Howard is an extremely talented athlete. This guy averages a double-double in his sleep. He's a 3-time Defensive Player of the Year, so not only can he get it done on offense, but he can contribute on the defensive side of the floor. And we've obviously seen what he's done in the postseason. He took a 2009 Magic team to the NBA Finals by himself. We haven't seen that from Boogie Cousins. He's been the only really marquee guy. You can make an argument, Rudy Gay, but he's been the only marquee star on his team, and he hasn't really made the postseason. Yes, he puts up 26 and 12, but we were just talking about Kevin Love a couple shows back. He was averaging 26 and 12 on Minnesota. But could you say he's an MVP guy or a superstar in this league? No, because he hasn't won postseason games or even made it to the postseason. So I think with Boogie Cousins, he's had some off-the-court issues. He likes those technical fouls. He's gone through 3 head coaches, I believe, in his short tenure for the Kings. Yes, he puts up numbers. I think he's the most talented post player in the league. But overall, big man, I want a guy who gets it done on both ends of the floor, and Dwight Howard does that.
Yeah, hold on. I'm definitely going to have to go with Dwight Howard there as well. But DeMarcus Cousins is definitely, I wouldn't call him a close second, but he's definitely up there as far as competing with Howard goes. But say what you want about Dwight Howard as far as, personality and whatnot, but I feel bad for this guy. I mean, people are just hacking him his whole career. And Stephen A. Smith always says, one day Dwight Howard's going to fight back. And I don't know if I want to be in the way of that one, because this guy People are constantly hacking him. His free throw shooting is tough. I mean, that's one edge you can give to DeMarcus Cousins. He's going to hit his free throws at a much higher rate than Dwight Howard, but I don't know if that's a franchise-changing difference as far free throws go. So I'm definitely going to go with Howard there. I mean, as you mentioned, 2009, he led his team to the NBA Finals. Quite frankly, easily could have won that Finals pretty much by himself. I mean, Rashard Lewis was playing on the top of his game that year. Jameer Nelson was there. J.J. Redick was there.
They're not guys that are household names.
It was him, and that they didn't have another superstar there.
Right.
What they did was they had 4 out and 1 in, which is what I wanted to see. Which is what I wanted the Rockets to do this year, with have Dwight Howard in the middle and 4 jump shooters around him, which I think the Rockets were doing at some point in the season. But when Josh Smith is on the floor, sure, he's going to want to take his threes, but he's going to want, backdoor cuts. He's going to want some post-ups. And when Terrence Jones comes back, who is their starting power forward, he's definitely not taking threes. So what I'd like to see the Rockets do is I'd like to see them bring in a stretch four who could shoot threes, like a guy like Kevin Love. And if they had brought in Chris Bosh, I think this would have helped even more.
Right, because Dwight Howard has pretty much played alongside a stretch the power forward his entire career.
He's never had. Yeah,
in Orlando, it was Rashard Lewis, but when he went to the Lakers and we finally saw him play against a guy who likes his touches in the post and likes to play in the paint, in Pau Gasol, it didn't work out well. It ended up with Pau Gasol being asked to take 3-point jump shots or long twos. So Dwight Howard really needs to be the lone big man
he could definitely get
in the paint,
done.
and he can get the job done. Whereas Boogie Cousins, he's had some talent around him, but he's been through 3 coaches. He's got attitude issues. He can put up numbers, but this guy, he hasn't made the playoffs, whereas Dwight Howard has. I mean, and Dwight Howard was making playoffs in the Eastern Conference when the East was actually competitive.
Yeah.
In comparison, DeMarcus Cousins obviously going through a dogfight of a Western Conference this year. But still, Rudy Gay, he had Isaiah Thomas. He's got pieces around him, but he just can't get. I don't know why he's not having success, and I think it comes down to the intangibles. And I think Dwight Howard has the edge in that category.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with you there. I think he's a better overall team defender than DeMarcus Cousins there. But another battle of the defenders here. I got Jimmy Butler on the Bulls or Kawhi Leonard on the Spurs. Who would you rather start your franchise with? Both late first-round picks, both kind of guys who snuck into their roles on their teams. So who do you think who would you rather start your franchise with if you're a GM in the NBA?
You're going to like this answer, Jimmy Butler. Jimmy Butler has been what you want out of a first-round pick. Progression each year. He came into this league, and what did he do when he got into this league? He knew how to play defense. He's an athlete. He's a great on-ball defender. He's 6'7", he's lanky. He knows how to get it done on the dirty end of the floor. But we saw growth from him, and obviously worked out in the offseason. Now he's averaging 20 points a game. He's getting it done on both ends of the floor, and that's what you love as a two-way player. And frankly, Kawhi Leonard has never been the number 1 scoring option or even the number 2 scoring option for a team. He's never been the man for a team on a given night. Yes, he showed up in the NBA Finals, but I think the Spurs won on team basketball, and Kawhi Leonard was just a representative for the Spurs because they couldn't give it to all of them, so they gave it to a guy who was averaging some decent numbers. I think he was averaging, 20 points and 9 rebounds, so it's not great.
And he did play great D on LeBron, but that doesn't solve it.
But, come on. Kawhi Leonard's a great defender. He's a decent athlete. He can score. He can do a little bit of everything, which is what I love about him. But he's never been the man or the center of attention for an opposition's defense or for a coach's scheme on the other side of the floor. And frankly, he's played with a lot of talent around him. Tony Parker, Manu Ginobili, and Tim Duncan, those are 3 great guys that draw a lot of attention away from Kawhi Leonard. And he's played under the greatest coach in the NBA right now, in Greg Popovich. And Jimmy Butler has put up 20 a night without Derrick Rose. Derrick Rose is not on the floor. Just Jimmy Butler has been asked to, produce, and he has. Yes, Pau Gasol is there, but he's the only other scorer, and Jimmy Butler has picked up the slack. So I would have to go with Jimmy Butler ahead of Kawhi Leonard.
This one's tough because obviously I would say they're both similar guys as far as I think they're definitely the 2 best on-ball defenders in the whole NBA. I would give Jimmy Butler the slight advantage, but that's a very slight advantage right there. But I'd be interested to see what Kawhi Leonard would do. Let's say we put him on the Orlando Magic. this year. What does he do? Does he put up more scoring because there's nobody there? Does his numbers slack because he doesn't have that?
What is he averaging right now? 14 and 7, something like that?
He's averaging, I believe, 16 points, 7 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 steals, and a block. So,
I think he would average the exact same in Orlando. I don't think his numbers would go up at all.
So you don't think he would improve from a worse team?
No, because we haven't really seen anything from him in terms of offense that makes you go, wow! Holy crap, this guy's a really good player on offense. His label, his brand is defense. He's a great defensive player. He does a little bit of everything. Rebounds, steals, blocks. He does it all. And on offense, because he's playing on a team with Tony Parker, Manu, and Tim Duncan, he gets his open looks because no one's paying attention to him on offense. So I think if you put him in Orlando, he's going to be the focus night in and night out. I think he averages what he's averaging in San Antonio, but I don't think he's averaging more, even though he's the number one option.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I'd be interested to see where he goes. I mean, he's demanding a max contract, and people are debating whether he's going to get it.
And I think that's what the Spurs' hesitations about giving it to him, because they've never had a large enough sample size of him playing in games without those 3 other guys. If Tim Duncan, Tony Parker, and Manu were out for like 20 games and Kawhi Leonard was healthy, I think if he did well in those 20 games, then we'd say, all right, we'll work out a deal for you. We need to keep you. But the fact that that hasn't happened, I think, is rightfully so, that the Spurs are a little bit hesitant to give him a max deal.
Yeah, I mean, but Jimmy Butler, I just got to go with him. I mean, this guy works so hard. I mean, he's the 30th overall pick, so you're not guaranteed a spot on the team. He had to work his way up, and he had to work his way for minutes. I mean, back when Derrick Rose got hurt and they had to play the Heat, and they stole Game 1 when Nate Robinson was their point guard. Jimmy Butler was a big reason for that. He was playing 47 minutes a night in those 5 straight games.
He's an athlete, like I said,
and he works his butt off every night.
He came into this league a great athlete, so he relied on his defensive abilities. And I think in the NBA, when you're a draft pick, the first thing you need to know is how to play good defense and how to be a great on-ball defender. And then eventually you just work out in the offseason and the offensive game comes along.
And you look what he did there. I mean, his first big playoff matchup of his whole career, he's guarding LeBron James and Dwayne Wade. His first big matchup. I mean, this guy, the year before, was one of those role players who maybe gets switched out in the D-League, comes in blowouts, and then he's guarding LeBron James.
His ceiling was like Thabo Cephalosha, maybe Tony Allen, because his role on that team was defense. He was a defensive role player, but obviously he's averaging 20 a night, so he's shown you the intangibles. He's shown you the dedication. And I think on a team with Pau Gasol and Derrick Rose, he's still putting up 20 a night as a potential second, third option. That's pretty dang good.
Yeah, I would definitely give the advantage to Jimmy Butler here. This is I think in my opinion, this is one of the closest player comparisons we've ever done, just because I like both guys. But I think the Spurs have to give Kawhi Leonard the max contract here, because if you look, let's say Tim Duncan, maybe he stays 1 more year at max, so he retires after next season. Manu Ginobili's 37, so he's probably got a couple years left.
Right. Tony Parker's 31.
31. So in 3 years, they could potentially just have, let's say they let Kawhi walk. They would just have Tony Parker and, Danny Green.
Well, let's say Tony Parker retires in 2 years. Kawhi Leonard's only, 22, maybe 24 years old at the maximum. That starting 5 potentially could be Patty Mills, Daniel Green, Kawhi Leonard, Tiago Splitter,
like Jeff Ayers or something.
And Jeff Ayers, or maybe they go on free agency and get another power forward or draft a guy. But yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with you. They need to work out a deal with Kawhi Leonard because he's relatively young. He's got a lot of potential. His ceiling has yet to be fulfilled, and they're a veteran-laden roster. They got a lot of guys who could retire after a year or two, potentially this year. So they definitely need to work out a deal with Kawhi Leonard.
I think Tony's got about 5 years left. So I think if you can keep Kawhi, you got Tony. So you're technically a contender in the West every year. But I would say a big factor in what you give Kawhi Leonard is how they play at the playoffs. Because, like we mentioned, they're probably going to be a 6, 7, or 8 seed. Right. You're going up against the top 3 teams in the best conference in the whole world. Right. If Kawhi Leonard could pick up his game, because if they play the Warriors, he'll be guarding Curry or Thompson for most of that game, which is a nightmare in itself. Then on the other end, you're going to have to be putting up some good numbers on the offensive end. So if Kawhi Leonard could average 20 points a game and hold Curry to maybe 15 or 16 a game, I think you have to give him the max contract there. But I'm going to go with Jimmy Butler in this comparison. But the trade deadline in the NBA is coming up. It's the 19th. Which team in the league do you think needs just one more move to maybe put them over the top, or maybe they need to drop somebody to rebuild for the future? What do you think? What move do you think needs to happen?
Well, given the fact that Blake Griffin, staph infection, he's going to be out for a month and a half, maybe even 2 months at the worst, and they just made the move. The Clippers just made the move for Austin Rivers because they don't really have any guards. If you look at their roster, they have Chris Paul, Jamal Crawford, but they have no depth behind them at the point guard or two guard spot, which is why they got Austin Rivers, because he's sort of a versatile guard. Yeah. He's a combo guard. He can play the point or the two, but they do need one more guy because J.J. Redick has been battling back injuries all season. Darren Collison left to go to Sacramento. They need a talented guard who can come in relief of Chris Paul, because Chris Paul is going to be needing to play some heavy minutes down the stretch. They need a guy who can give them a breather and contribute.
Yeah, I think the Clippers definitely would be that team that needs to make a move. I mean, one guy that comes to mind is Kenneth Faried, who's been on the trade blocks for the whole season, hasn't really been fitting in too well in Denver this year. I mean, you call him Manimal. He's the Manimal. He does it on the offensive glass. I remember when I was out in Denver over Christmas vacation, he grabbed, what was it, 17 or 18 rebounds, and I think 8 or 9 of them were offensive. And he probably had 3 putback dunks. So he was on fire that game. And I think for that stretch, he was averaging like 15 rebounds and 18 points a game for that 3-game weekend stretch there. But I would think either Kenneth Faried would have to go there to start in place of Griffin, and then you could bring him off the bench when the playoffs start. Or another guy who's on the trade blocks just recently, I think it came out today or yesterday, Aaron Aflalo, who is a great scorer, not going to do much else besides score, but some teams just interested were the Clippers, Lakers, or the Chicago Bulls.
And it's interesting because he just signed with Denver, and now he's on the trade block. He's an efficient scorer. I would love to have him on my team if I'm a fan of the Clippers or any other team, but they just need more depth. When it comes postseason time, it's about your bench, it's about your coaching, it's really not about your stars. It's about who can come off your bench and contribute the most.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the thing with and the Nuggets did come out and say we're taking a first-round pick for Aflalo. So they're not just going to let him go for maybe a second-round future pick. They're taking a first-round pick or a good player for him. So he's definitely not highly expendable, right. But it's definitely on the trade block. But I would think the Nuggets or the Clippers would have to make a move here at this point, this far in the season, because the Cavs, look, what are they going to do? They've done enough this year.
And they can't. They have no more assets to really trade draft picks, but they're going to be second rounders. They're not going to be first rounders. They don't have any assets they could really move to get pieces. They have everything they need. They just need to gel.
They just need to gel together. But speaking of injuries, we just mentioned the Blake Griffin injury. What do you think, Holden, has been the worst injury? I'm not talking about like painful or the pain or whatever. I'm talking about impact on the team.
Most damaging to a team's
Most damaging to a team, not like what do you think was the most painful or hardest to come back from? But yeah,
obviously Kobe.
Yeah,
Kobe out with the torn rotator cuff. I mean, the Lakers had no shot of making the playoffs even with Kobe. But I think in terms of a fan standpoint, box office attraction, there's no reason to watch the Lakers anymore, except if you enjoy watching teams suffer and burn and crash to the ground. Otherwise, there's no point watching the Lakers without Kobe. He was the main reason why a lot of people watched this year, even though they weren't in the playoffs, because we know Kobe's on the verge of retirement in the next 2 seasons.
See these games, yeah.
They want to see his last few games. And the fact that he's not playing this season is a huge blow to the ticket box sales of the Lakers franchise.
Yeah, Holden, Kobe's obviously it's going to be a tough injury anytime you get hurt, but one injury I was pretty upset about was Jabari Parker. I mean, this guy I picked him to be Rookie of the Year. I think you did too. Definitely it was going to come down between him and Wiggins, and then the Bucks come off to a great start. He kind of started getting into a groove. He was averaging I think he had 4 straight games of 15-plus points, and then he goes down against the Suns. And I was like, I remember I was watching that game, and he goes down with a knee injury, and I'm thinking, oh, maybe he just bruised it a little bit. But in the back of my head, I'm thinking, those kind of falls usually end in something bad. And I remember checking the next day, Jabari Parker will miss the rest of the season. I just think, I hope it doesn't hurt his career because this guy has such a bright future ahead of him and he's a great player. I just hope this doesn't get him on the wrong foot. Maybe he can't come back into the form that he was. And you look at the Bucks too. I mean, I think they're going to finish 4, 5, or 6 seed this year. So even with Jabari, maybe they stay at that range. Maybe they can go up a couple seeds. But in the playoffs, that team was pretty deep, and maybe they could have upset the Hawks in the first round, or maybe made a decent run.
Just having them there,
as
an added score.
And not only does he help you this season, but now next season you've got to wait to build chemistry. Maybe even if you don't go far this year, the team's got chemistry and they're motivated to go for next year.
Right.
So I definitely think the Jabari Parker injury was definitely a tough one. But Blake Griffin with the staph infection, I know that was recently, but like we mentioned, that could knock them out of the playoffs. That's definitely going to be a tough one for them to swallow there. Mm-hmm. But so we only have a little bit of time left. We got about 8 minutes. But do you have anything else you want to talk about? Maybe about the All-Star game?
Well, I mean, if you don't mind transitioning to a little bit of NFL, obviously we've heard some free agent news about DeMarco Murray and Des Bryant. DeMarco Murray potentially, he wants to stay in Dallas. He's voiced that he wants to stay in Dallas, but Des Bryant is the priority. Where do you think DeMarco Murray might land if he doesn't stay in Dallas?
This one's tough because not a lot of teams are going to be willing to throw out big paydays for a guy who's 26, which sounds very young in most sports, but for an NFL running back, that's getting up there.
He's going on 27.
Yeah, so maybe they give him a 4-year deal, so he's 31 at the end of that contract, 31. But I think a good team for him would be the San Diego Chargers. I mean, they haven't really had that running back since LT left, and I think and that team is always a contender. I mean, a lot of us picked, when we do our Contenders-Pretenders series, a lot of us picked them to make a run and be a contender. And I just think the one thing that's been holding them back is their running back. And I think if you can get a guy like DeMarco Murray, who arguably some people think he still was the MVP this year. So if you could bring him into the Chargers, and especially if the Broncos lose Peyton Manning this year, that division is wide open. So if you could bring in a guy like Murray and take that division, have a good record, get some home field advantage in the playoffs, I think that could slingshot your team right into a Super Bowl. So I would think that would be the best case scenario for Murray and then the Chargers. But of course, you like to see him stay in Dallas because of the season he had this year. But I just don't think it's going to happen. As you mentioned, Dez is the priority.
Right. I think a great fit for DeMarco would actually be within that division, the Giants. The Giants do not have a running back. They lost Ahmad Bradshaw, and they lost Brandon Jacobs. They haven't had a talented running back since those two guys left New York. They had Andre Williams this year, a rookie. He contributed a little bit.
But he's not going to get you a ring.
He's not going to get you what DeMarco Murray can get you over 4 years. And they had another running back who stepped in, came from the Raiders. His name escapes me, my apologies, but he came over from Oakland, and he didn't produce. He was out for a couple games with an injury. I think DeMarco Murray would be a perfect fit for
that'd be a quick team, huh?
For New York. I mean, you talk about a team that is in need of a running game and loves to throw off the play action, the deep ball with Victor Cruz and Eli Manning and Odell Beckham Jr. They love the deep ball, and to have a successful deep threat passing game, you need to have a strong running game and a downhill running game. And I think that plays right to DeMarco Murray's strengths. And this guy, he's shown that he can produce with an offensive line and without an offensive line, because he did have over 1,000 yards rushing before Dallas became the Dallas offensive line this year. So I think he would be a great signing by the Giants. 4 years.
That'd be tough to see Murray in a Giants uniform going to play Dallas.
Exactly, it'd be kind of weird, but we've seen it before with
Deshaun Jackson.
Right, Deshaun Jackson. Martellus Bennett was a Cowboys player, then he joined the Giants before eventually landing in Chicago. So we've seen a lot of flip-flopping in that division. I think DeMarco Murray would be a great signing for New York.
Exactly. I mean, it's tough because I hate seeing players having to leave their team. And, I mean, Murray did come out today saying, I don't care about rushing yards. I just want a Super Bowl ring. So some people think when he says rushing yard, he means money. But obviously you want to get paid. I mean, look what he did this year. But you look at how many players go through the NFL, and obviously the great goal is to win the Super Bowl, and they can't. So if I'm Murray, I'm going to a team that's basically has everything set in place except for me. And when I step in,
it changes.
It changes, and we're
otherwise, get your money.
You take
get
your
it
money.
while you
if
can.
You're going to stay,
he's a running back. He's not going to be like Peyton Manning, who's going to play for 13, 14 years in the league and possibly go through 3 contracts.
No.
He's not going to be a wide receiver like Randy Moss or Andre Johnson, who's going to go through 2 or 3 contracts. Running backs, usually it's your rookie contract, then your one contract that you get after you produce, and that's it, you retire. So if I'm DeMarco Murray, 27 years old, you can get 4 years out of a 27-year-old guy.
Definitely.
Frank Gore produced at 31 this year. So I definitely think this guy needs to focus on getting his money, and the success will come. But right now, how much is that Super Bowl going to cost after you retire? Is it going to be as much as having $31 million in the bank? I don't think so. Get your money.
It's going to be, is he going to have to maybe take a medium there? Is he going to have to go to a team that could offer him decent money, but maybe 2 years from now, or a Super Bowl contender? Does he not take a lot to go to a Super Bowl contender now? Or does he go to a team like the Raiders, who could definitely use DeMarco Murray, but might not win in the 4 years that he's there, but his bank account's full? So I mean, it's a tough one. I don't really see a team at this point who could pay him decent money.
I mean, there's a lot of teams. I mean, even Atlanta. Atlanta has a great quarterback, Matt Ryan, Julio Jones at wide receiver, Roddy White. They don't have a running back. Steven Jackson came in. He's been injured his entire time there in Atlanta.
He's getting older, too.
Yeah, they have the money. They can dish it out to DeMarco Murray.
Well, who knows if they have a fake fan
noise.
sounds.
Yeah,
who knows if Murray's going to want to go to that nonsense. But do you think let me ask you this very quickly. If Murray winds up, if Jerry Jones and the Cowboys can work it out where they can get Dez and Murray, because obviously Dez is, you need him. Do you think they could win a championship next year with who they got?
No, because they don't have a defense. And defense wins championships. That has been the mantra of the Super Bowl for the past longest time.
You look at the Patriots, they improved their defense and they win this year.
Right. I mean, look, it's a good offense, but it's an even better defense. And the Cowboys don't have that. And I was watching NFL Live today, and they were going through the scenarios of how they could keep both guys. And the most likely scenario is they cut one of their offensive linemen.
Which you can't. Look how much success they got there.
Right, but they can pretty much fill that hole, I think, because they're keeping the core all-pro guys. But on the defensive side of the ball, they're going to get rid of Henry Melton. They're not going to exercise his $24 million option. He was a stud in Chicago, played through an injury this year for the Cowboys. They're going to have to cut him and get rid of their best corner, Brendan Carr. So when you talk about that, you're taking away 2 players on that defense. That defense just gets worse. And look, you're putting all the onus on Tony Romo and that offense, and I don't want to put a lot of onus on Tony Romo because we've seen what happens.
Yeah, I mean, and if you look at the offensive line of the Cowboys, say Murray walks, you could almost bring in anybody, because if you have that good of an offensive line,
right?
Almost. I mean, obviously,
and there's some talented running backs out there, and Mark Ingram in New Orleans, Sean Moreno.
Yeah, they can just pick them up.
Who
was their backup this year?
James Randall or something like that. Randall, he had a decent year. There are some Ben Tate. There are some guys out there on the free agency market
who you can get cheap.
Who you can get cheap for a bargain buy.
With that offensive line.
And with that offensive line, they can give you probably minimum 800 yards, which is still fairly good.
Especially if you can keep Dez and that defense. Maybe you can add a few guys on the defensive end.
Exactly.
So I would think the best case scenario, if the Cowboys want to win now, because Tony Romo's only getting older,
right?
I think they'd have to let Murray walk, because obviously you want to keep Murray, but you'd have to let something go. You can't have it both
you'd
ways.
Have to cut some other positions, and
unless they take a pay cut,
right?
Which I don't think either
no
of
one's
them
going to do. No, it's pay cut or you're out.
Yeah, but so we got about 30 seconds left. Any final remarks?
Well, Jeremy, if you're watching tonight, I'm surprised you didn't call in. I thought you would call in with a question, an anonymous question. I don't know, but I hope you've understood my opinions on Jake Peavy and how he's
maybe when Jeremy,
an interesting pitcher.
Maybe next Wednesday when Jeremy's back, he'll have to defend his man Jake Peavy. But anyway, that's all we have for this edition of Sports Talk. I'm Justin Palillo.
And I'm Holden Pirelli.
We'll see you next week, and check out our YouTube channel. We have a couple videos
up there. Sports Talk.